David. He is 48 now. A voice of controlled grief, fraying at the edges. The detective said it was an accident. A wet road, a split second of bad luck. That's the story we all agreed to tell. For the kids, for the community, for my reputation. David was the grieving widower, the pillar. I buried my beautiful wife, Elena. I comforted our daughters. I moved on, as much as a man can. Then yesterday, while clearing the attic, I found her old recorder, the one she used for her garden club notes. There was a tape inside, labeled with yesterday's date, a date she never saw. Elena's voice was filtered. David, if you're hearing this, you found it, which means you probably did it, or you're about to. David whisper, her voice, from beyond the grave, accusing me. But she's wrong. I loved her, which means she made this tape because she was afraid of someone else. And if I didn't kill my wife, the man who did is still out there, and he knows I have this tape. She set a trap with her last breath, and I just sprung it. Detective. Forensics confirmed it. The blood on the tape housing, it's the victim's, Elena's. She was recording it while it was happening, and her final moments are on this tape. Listen. David has just heard his dead wife accuse him of her murder on a tape recorded after her death. He claims innocence. Based on his reaction alone, what's your first instinct? The story begins with the sound of rain. It's the sound that buried her. For 8 months, every time it rains, I see the phone call. I see the flashing red and blue lights reflecting on wet asphalt. I see the sheet, the terrible final shape of it. I don't see the car. They wouldn't let me see the car. Our attic smells of cedar and lost time. It's a museum of a life we were too busy living to curate. My lawyer, Frank, has been on me for weeks. David, you need to start the process. The emotional process. The legal process. Going through her things, it's a step. He means it's a step toward probate, toward remarrying someday, toward looking like a man who isn't frozen in the amber of his own grief. For the public, for the court of public opinion, which in our gated community of Shadowbrook is the only court that matters. So I climbed the pull-down stairs, a dust mask hanging loose around my neck, a heavy-duty contractor bag in my hand. The goal was simple: clothes for donation. The impersonal stuff first. It felt surgical. It felt like a betrayal. Elena was the organized one. Neat, labeled bins. Winter coats. Sophie, baby. Tax documents 2015-2018. I moved past them, toward the far corner where garment bags hung like ghosts in the weak light from the single bulb. My knee bumped an old, hard-sided suitcase, sending a stack of National Geographic magazines sliding. And there it was, peeking from behind them, as if it had been waiting for the disturbance. A gray plastic case, the size of a hardcover book. A Radio Shack logo, faded. A relic. Inside, I knew, would be the handheld microcassette recorder she used for her garden club meetings. My memory's a sieve, David, she'd laugh, holding it up. This is my backup brain. My hands were numb, not from cold, but from a sudden vertiginous sense of trespass. This wasn't a sweater or a pair of shoes. This was her voice. I hadn't heard it in 8 months, except in dreams that dissolved upon waking. Carefully, I lifted the case. It wasn't dusty. That was the first wrong thing. I sat on the rough plywood floor, my back against a beam. The latch clicked open with a sound like a cracking knuckle. There it was, the small black recorder, its buttons worn shiny, and inside its slot, a microcassette. A tiny 60-minute prison for sound. I almost just closed the case and put it back. But my eyes, traitorous things, flicked down. The label was her handwriting, sharp, clear, architect's script. She'd written a single date. It was yesterday's date. The air left the attic. The cedar smell turned cloying, suffocating. My heart wasn't beating. It was thrashing, a bird trapped in a chimney. A mistake. She meant another date, an old date. But I knew Elena. She was precise to a fault. She labeled leftover soup containers. She would not mislabel this. With trembling fingers, I pried the cassette out. I held it to the light. The tiny reels inside were full. The tape had been used, recorded on a day she had been dead for over 200. Logic scrabbled for purchase. Someone was playing a sick joke. One of her garden club friends? A neighbor? But no one had been in the attic. The cleaning lady didn't touch storage. The girls, my daughters, they hadn't been up here since they were teenagers hunting for Halloween decorations. The recorder felt heavy, predatory in my hand. I pressed eject, then play. The speaker emitted a hollow, empty hiss. The tape was at the beginning. I sat there for 10 minutes, maybe 20, listening to the blood roar in my ears. The rain tapped its indifferent code on the roof. Below me, my house, our house, was silent and vast. Sophie was at her dorm at Cornell. Chloe was at her friend's lake house for the weekend. I was alone with this thing. I had to know. I carried the case downstairs like it was radioactive, setting it on the immaculate quartz island in our kitchen. The room smelled of lemon cleaner and emptiness. I poured 2 fingers of Macallan, downed it, the heat doing nothing to melt the ice in my veins. Then I got a fresh pad of paper and a pen, a detective's tools, as if I could control this. Took a breath that shuddered all the way down, and pressed play. The hiss was louder in the quiet kitchen. Then a click, a rustle of fabric, a shaky inhale. Her voice. It wasn't the garden club voice, bright and informative. It was low, compressed by the cheap microphone, thick with an emotion I couldn't immediately place. Not fear, resignation. David? My name, a direct address. From beyond the grave. I doubled over, a physical pain searing through my gut. If you're hearing this, you found it. A pause, the sound of her swallowing, which means you probably did it. Or you're about to. I jerked back from the recorder as if slapped. No, I whispered to the empty room. Elena, no. The tape played on, her voice a spectral presence in my bright dead kitchen. I'm sorry to do it this way. It's cruel. But you left me no quiet options. If I'm dead, it wasn't an accident. And if it looks like one, it's because you made it look like one. You're good at making things look like what they're not. Her words were measured, rehearsed. This was a performance, a final act. I've left a key taped to the bottom of the blue planter on the patio, the one with the agave you always said would stab someone. The key is for a storage locker. Unit 114, at Sentinel Storage, on Route 9. The password for the lock is our anniversary. Backwards. I was writing frantically, my hand cramping. Blue planter, Sentinel, anniversary backwards. Inside the locker you'll find what you need. The proof. The numbers don't lie, David. The money always tells the truth, even when you don't. Money, my breath hitched. What money? I loved you. I think part of me still does, which is the sickest part of all of this. But you loved the idea of us more than you ever loved me. You loved the portfolio, the address, the reputation. I was just necessary set dressing. Her voice broke then, just once. A single wet crack that nearly broke me. So, here's my last piece of set design, David. This tape. If you're innocent, it's a map. Follow it. It will lead you to who really wants me gone. If you're guilty, well, then it's just my voice, haunting you from a little plastic box. A fitting end for a ghost, don't you think? Another long pause. I could hear her breathing, steadying herself. Goodbye, David. I really did hope it wouldn't end like this. Click. The hiss returned. I stared at the recorder, the numbers frozen, a monument to 2 minutes and 17 seconds that had dismantled my world. She thought I killed her. She died believing I was capable of it. The rage came first. Hot, blinding. How could she? After 22 years, after building everything together. The betrayal was oceanic. Then, the rage receded, leaving the cold, hard shore of a new, more terrifying reality. She made this tape because she was afraid. Not generically afraid. Afraid of me. Or afraid for me. The distinction was everything. You're wrong, I said to her voice, still hanging in the air. I didn't touch you. I would never. But if I didn't, then her fear had a different target. Someone she couldn't go to the police about. Someone she needed to leave a trail for. And by finding this tape, I had just announced to that someone, whoever he was, that the trail was now active. The man who really killed my wife now knew I was looking. And he knew I had a map. Is he telling the truth? Is this a trap set by the real killer? Or what we gonna find out soon? The rain had stopped. The silence in the house was now a listening silence. I felt observed by the very walls. The tape recorder sat on the island, a black hole sucking the sanity from the room. Elena's words coiled in my brain. The blue planter, the agave. I moved to the wall of sliding glass doors leading to the patio. Outside, the world was dripping and dark. The security lights cast cones of sterile illumination over the wet flagstones. There it was, the large cobalt-glazed pot, the agave's spiny arms thrusting upward like a warning. I didn't want to go out there. Going out there made it real. It meant accepting her instructions, stepping into the labyrinth she'd built from the grave. But not going out there was impossible. The need to know was a physical thirst. I slid the door open. The humid night air clung to my skin. The planter was heavier than it looked. Grunting, I tipped it onto its side. Dirt spilled onto the patio. I ran my fingers along the grooved bottom, through clinging wet soil and spider webs. Nothing. My heart sank. Was this part of the cruelty? A wild goose chase? Then my fingernail caught on an edge. A small rectangular strip of industrial-grade tape, the same blue as the glaze, perfectly camouflaged. Peeling it back, I felt the cold metal, a single silver key. I snatched it up, wiping the dirt on my sweatpants. It was unmarked, generic, the key to everything or to nothing. Back inside, I locked the door, my eyes scanning the dark tree line. He knows I have a map. The thought was a splinter in my mind. Was he out there now? The good husband from 2 doors down, Greg, who always asked a few too many questions about my merger last year? My business partner, Leo, whose eyes had held a strange, flat calculation when he'd hugged me at the funeral? The stranger? I needed the locker. Now. But Sentinel storage would be closed. Gates locked. The frustration was a scream trapped in my chest. I was a rat in a maze, and the scientist was dead. I poured another drink, but didn't sip it. I opened my laptop, my fingers clumsy. I Googled Sentinel Storage Route 9. It was a 20-minute drive. A 24-hour access facility? You need a gate code after hours. My hope flatlined. Then I remembered her words. The password for the lock is our anniversary. Backwards. Not the gate code, the lock. A padlock on the unit itself. A plan, brittle and desperate, formed. I could go tonight. Scale the fence. It was a risk, but waiting felt more dangerous. Every minute I sat here was a minute the killer had to get to it first, if he hadn't already. But first I had to see. I opened a new tab and logged into our joint cloud storage, the one we used for bills and tax PDFs. Elena's login was still there. I hadn't been able to delete it. I typed in the search bar, Sentinel, storage, locker. Nothing. The money always tells the truth. I opened our accounting software. We had a family account, a business account for my consultancy, and her personal account for the garden club and her charity work. I started with hers. The last 6 months were a blur of normalcy. Donations to the botanical garden, purchases from nurseries, coffee shops. Then, 3 months before her death, a series of withdrawals. Cash. $500, then $1,000, then $800. Never enough to trigger a mandatory report, but consistent. Over $9,000 in total, unaccounted for. My own business account was clean, profitable. Then I saw it. A line item from 4 months ago. Consultancy retainer Luminous Holdings, $75,000. I didn't recognize the client name. I clicked. The attached invoice was generic, for strategic advisory services. The receiving bank was a numbered account in the Caymans. A cold sweat beaded on my neck. I didn't authorize this. Leo handled operations, but I signed off on every client, every invoice. I searched my email. Nothing from Luminous Holdings. I texted Leo, "Hey, quick cue. Remember Luminous Holdings? Need to check something on that tax prep." The three dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. A full minute passed. My phone buzzed. "Leo, Luminous? Name doesn't ring a bell. You sure it was us? Might be a glitch in QuickBooks. Want me to look Monday?" Too fast. Too dismissive. Me. Probably. I'll check my files. Forget it. "Leo, you okay, Dave? Sounds late." "Just can't sleep. TX. I wasn't okay. A phantom client, a $75,000 transfer to an offshore account. Elena withdrawing cash. Were they connected? Was this the proof in the locker?" The doorbell rang. The sound was a gunshot in the silent house. I froze, my blood turning to slush. I wasn't expecting anyone. I crept to the foyer, avoiding the front windows. The security panel screen showed a fisheye view of the porch. A woman stood there, holding a casserole dish draped with a towel. Sarah, from across the street, the neighborhood wellness coordinator. Her smile in the grainy image was wide, unwavering. I didn't move. I held my breath. She rang again, longer this time. Then she leaned in, her mouth close to the camera. "David, I saw your lights on. I made a lasagna. I know Chloe's away. Just thought you shouldn't be alone." Her voice was syrupy with concern. Normal, neighborly concern. But all I could think was, did she see me go to the planter? Is she watching? After another moment she shrugged, her smile faltering. She placed the dish on the porch bench, gave a little wave to the camera, and walked back into the darkness. I waited until her porch light went off across the street. Then I armed the security system to away mode, which would silently ping my phone with any alert. I changed into dark jeans and a black sweatshirt. I put the key in my pocket. It felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. I took the old Ford pickup I used for yard work, not the Mercedes. Less conspicuous. The drive to Sentinel Storage was a blur of streetlights and shadows. The facility was at the edge of an industrial park, surrounded by a 10-foot hurricane fence topped with razor wire. A single yellow security light buzzed over the access gate. I parked a block away, in the lot of a shuttered furniture store. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. This was insanity. Braking and entering. But the tape's voice was in my head. "If you're innocent, it's a map." I got out. The night air was cooler here, smelling of diesel and wet concrete. I approached the fence at a point away from the light. No cameras I could see. Just as I was looking for a handhold, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A security alert. Front door, motion. Someone was at my house. A wave of nausea hit me. It was a trap. Get me out here while someone searched. Or worse, planted something. I crouched in the shadows, pulling up the live feed. The image was dark, but the porch light sensor had triggered. The screen showed an empty porch. The lasagna dish was gone. In its place was a single, long-stemmed white lily, Elena's favorite flower. The message was clear. "We're inside the fence. We're in your garden. We know." I looked from the phone screen to the towering fence, then back at my truck. Go home, to a house that had been violated, or go forward, into the maze? Elena's voice, resigned, certain. "You left me no quiet options." I turned back to the fence, found a foothold in the chain link, and began to climb. David has found suspicious money moves, received a veiled threat at his door, and is now breaking into a storage unit. He's deep in the maze Elena left. Does his investigation seem like the actions of an innocent man desperately trying to clear his name and find his wife's real killer? Or a guilty man panicking as his hidden financial crimes and motive are about to be exposed? Or a man being expertly manipulated, possibly by the real killer, into taking the fall? The razor wire snagged my sweatshirt as I threw myself over the top of the fence. I heard fabric tear, felt a line of fire across my back. Then I was falling, landing hard on the asphalt with a jolt that shot up my spine. I lay there for a second, the wind knocked out of me, listening. Only the hum of distant traffic and the buzz of the security light. I pushed myself up. The storage complex was a canyon of identical orange roll-up doors, numbered in white. The place was a ghost town. Unit 114 was in the third row. I moved quickly, staying in the shadows between the long buildings, my nerves screaming that every dark corner hid a witness. There it was, a standard 10 by 10 unit, its door sealed with a heavy-duty master lock. My fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled with the key. It slid in smoothly. I turned it. The lock released with a solid clunk that echoed in the silent alleyway. The door rattled upward, a thunderous sound in the quiet. The smell that wafted out stopped me cold. Not dust and mildew, but the faint, clean scent of Elena's perfume. Jo Malone wood sage and sea salt, overlaid with something metallic and dry. I found the light pole and yanked it. A single bare bulb flickered on. The unit wasn't full. It was a curated museum of our undoing. In the center sat Elena's laptop, open on a folding table. To its left, a banker's box, lid off, filled with neat files. To its right, a large evidence board, the kind you see in police procedurals, propped on an easel. My legs carried me forward on autopilot. The board was the heart of it. In the center was a photo of me, taken at last year's company holiday party. From it, red yarn radiated out like arteries to other photos. Leo, smiling too widely. A man I didn't recognize, mid-50s, hard eyes. Voss. Printouts of bank statements with the luminous holdings transfers circled in angry red marker, maps with routes highlighted, and in the bottom corner, a photo of Elena's car, the driver's side crushed, circled with a question mark. But it was the notes, in her precise handwriting on index cards, that gutted me. Dean knows about the shortfall. Panicking? L promises Voss it will be handled. No loose ends. Cash withdrawals for V? Pressure payments? The car brakes felt soft last week. Coincidence? If anything happens to me, it's not an accident. It's David, Leo, and Voss. The last card was a bullet point list of evidence locations, ending with backup cloud, draft email to S. Garrity, hard copy here. Sergeant Garrity, the lead detective on her case, the one who'd patted my shoulder and said, "Sometimes accidents are just accidents, Mr. Thorne." She never sent it. She built this instead. The files were a chronology of betrayal. Forensic accounting printouts tracing how money was being slowly bled from my own company through shell corporations. Luminous Holdings was just one. Invoices for services never rendered. The shortfall was approaching $400,000. Leo's signature was on dozens of authorization forms. My signature was forged on others. Good forgeries, but not perfect. She'd flagged them with yellow sticky notes. Leo, my friend since college, my best man. He was stealing from me, and she'd found out. The final folder was personal. Photos of Leo and me through the years, our arms around each other. At the bottom was a single sheet of paper, a notarized document. It was a life insurance policy taken out by the company on its key executives, a standard practice. My name was on it. The beneficiary was the company, to be dispersed to surviving partners and family, a $2 million payout. The company had collected on me as the surviving partner. Leo had controlled the dispersal. He'd given Elena and the girls their share. But with the company's finances a hollow shell he'd created, where had that money really gone? A new, chilling narrative assembled itself in my mind. Leo was embezzling. Elena discovered it. She confronted him, or she confronted me. The forged signatures suggested they wanted to frame me if it all came out. But then she died. An accident that paid out a life insurance policy, injecting clean cash into the hemorrhaging company, with me as the grieving, oblivious frontman. Had Leo killed her? Or had this Voss character, whoever he was? I moved to the laptop. It was powered on, asleep. I tapped the spacebar. It woke to a password screen. I typed in our anniversary, backwards. Access denied. Think, David. Her voice in my head. What would she use? I typed in the girls' birthdays, combinations of our names. Nothing. My eyes fell on the evidence board, the photo of her car. The question mark. I typed in the license plate number. The desktop bloomed to life. The wallpaper was a recent photo of our family, all of us smiling on the beach in Cape Cod. The pain was a physical blow. There were only a few files on the desktop. A folder labeled Proof. A video file named For David, and a draft email to Sergeant Garrity, dated the day before her death, unsent. I opened the draft. It was concise, professional, and utterly damning. Sergeant Garrity, please find attached documentation outlining a pattern of embezzlement and fraud at Thorne and Associates Consultancy, orchestrated by my business partner, Leo Fowler, with the possible involvement of an associate named Martin Voss. I believe my husband, David Thorne, may be being framed for these activities. This email will send automatically if I do not log in and cancel it within 48 hours. Sincerely, Elena Thorne. She'd set a dead man switch, but she died before the 48 hours were up. Why hadn't it sent? I checked the email settings. The automated send had been disabled. Someone had accessed this laptop after her death. Leo? Had he found this place? If so, why was it all still here? Unless he wanted me to find it, to make the final frame complete. A new sound pierced my fugue, not from the laptop, but from outside. The slow, rolling crunch of tires on asphalt. Headlights washed across the mouth of the alley, between buildings. I killed the laptop lid, plunging the unit into near darkness, just the faint bleed of the security light from outside. I ducked behind the banker's box, my heart hammering against my ribs. A car door opened, then closed with a soft, expensive thunk. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, the scrape of a shoe on asphalt, coming closer. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped right outside the unit. I could see the shadow of a man fall across the floor. The rolling door began to move upward with a deafening metallic shriek. I was cornered, no back exit. My eyes scanned for a weapon. A loose piece of metal conduit leaned against the wall. I grabbed it, hefting its cold weight. The door rose to waist height, then stopped. A pair of polished leather loafers stood in the opening. Then the man crouched, peering into the gloom. It wasn't Leo. It was Martin Voss, the man from the photo. His face was all hard angles and cool appraisal. He smiled, a thin, humorless stretch of lips. "David Thorne," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "I had a feeling you'd take the bait. Your wife was always the clever one. Pity she was clever about the wrong things." He stood, pulling the door all the way open, flooding the unit with light. He was alone. In his hand he held not a gun, but a sleek digital recorder. "She left you quite the treasure hunt," Voss said, stepping inside. "But you see, Leo was always messy, emotional. I prefer clean lines, like a tape that leads a guilty husband to a secret stash of evidence, and a tragic confrontation with his wife's angry associate." He clicked the recorder on and placed it on the folding table. "Say hello, David. Confess something. It'll make the audio more compelling for the police." I tightened my grip on the conduit. "You killed her." "I facilitated an outcome," he corrected. "Leo provided the access to her car's maintenance schedule. The brake line was a work of art, a slow weep, predictable." He took another step. He was supposed to clean this place out, but he kept it. A little insurance against me, I suppose. Sentimental fool. Now I get to clean up his mess and Leo's. Or rather, one grieving, violent husband. He was going to kill me, stage it as a fight. My fingerprints on the conduit, his story of me attacking him when he confronted me about the embezzlement evidence. "The tape," I whispered. "Elena's tape. You had no way of knowing I'd find that." Voss's smile widened. "Oh, David, who do you think moved it from her safety deposit box to your attic? I needed you in the maze, and you walked right in." The final piece snapped into place. The horror was complete. I was the patsy, choreographed from beyond the grave by my wife, and from the shadows by this monster. Voss reached inside his tailored jacket. I didn't wait to see what he pulled out. I swung the conduit with a raw shout, not at him but at the single bare light bulb above us. The unit plunged into darkness. The digital recorder glowed like a malevolent eye. In the black, I heard Voss curse, and I ran. Voss were embezzling, Elena discovered it, and she was murdered. Voss has now cornered David in the storage unit, framing him as the final loose end. In this deadly stalemate, what should David's next move be? Fight. Use the conduit and the darkness to take Voss down. Then go to the police with the evidence. Or flight. Escape and go straight to Sergeant Garrity with everything, hoping he's believed over a professional like Voss. Or, use a third option. Use the recorder Voss brought. Try to trap him into a confession on tape, turning his own weapon against him. The darkness was absolute. A solid thing. It saved my life. Voss's first shot was a deafening crack that sparked off the concrete where I'd been standing a half-second before. The muzzle flash burned a temporary blue sun into my vision. I didn't think. I dropped and rolled toward where I remembered the table being, my shoulder slamming into a leg. Chaos was my ally. I heard him shuffle, curse again, a soft, professional sound of annoyance. He'd expected a cowering accountant, not a man fighting for his life in the dark. I scrambled on all fours, my hand brushing against the cool metal of the folding table, the laptop, the recorder. The digital recorder's tiny red LED was a pulsing beacon. Voss's confession device. My mind, sharpened by terror, saw the move. As he fired another blind shot toward the sound of my movement, the bullet thwacked into a file box. I lunged for the table, grabbed the recorder, and kept moving, crawling toward the back wall. I pressed stop, then record. The little red light glowed steadily. I shoved it into the front pocket of my sweatshirt, the fabric muting the light to a faint crimson blush. "You're making this tedious, David," Voss called out, his voice moving. He was circling to my left, using the sound of my breathing to triangulate. I held my breath, pressed my back against a cold metal shelf. "Just accept it. It's cleaner." The embezzling husband, overcome with guilt after his wife's death, kills himself after a confrontation with his victim's associate. It's tragic, it's neat. He was painting the scene for the police already. My suicide, with the conduit as the blunt object and his gun in my hand. A sliver of light from the alley outside outlined the rolled-up door. My escape route. It was 10 feet of open kill zone. I'd never make it. Then I remembered the contents of the unit. The banker's boxes. The shelf next to me held old paint cans Elena had stored here from a long-ago home project. Without a sound, I felt for one, hefted it. It was half full, sloshing. I took a deep, silent breath and threw it high and wide toward the opposite corner. It crashed against the wall with a spectacular, wet bang. Voss spun and fired twice. Rapid, crack, crack. In that moment, I erupted from my crouch, not toward the door, but toward him, low and fast, keeping below the trajectory of his gun. He heard me too late, started to pivot back. I hit him like a linebacker, my shoulder driving into his midsection. The air left him in a gratifying oof. We crashed to the concrete in a tangle of limbs. He was strong, wiry, and trained. He brought the gun around in a short, brutal arc. I blocked it with my forearm, a bone-jarring impact, and grabbed his wrist with both hands. We rolled, fighting for control of the weapon. His free hand clawed at my face, thumbs searching for my eyes. I drove my forehead down into his nose. I felt cartilage crunch, heard his wet gasp of pain. The gun trapped between us went off. The sound was muffled, visceral. Voss's body jerked. His grip on the weapon went slack. A hot, startling wetness spread between us. I scrambled back, panting, disengaging. He didn't get up. He lay on his side, curled slightly, one hand pressed to his abdomen. In the dim light from the alley, I saw the dark, spreading stain on his light gray shirt. His eyes were open, wide with shock, fixed on me. He was trying to speak, but only produced wet, gurgling breaths. The gun lay on the concrete between us. A sleek, black semi-automatic. I stared at it, then at him. This wasn't part of the plan. His plan, or mine. I crawled to the table, found the light pole, and yanked it. The bare bulb flickered back on, illuminating the nightmare. Voss, bleeding out. The scattered evidence of my framed life. The glowing recorder in my pocket. I had to move. I grabbed the laptop, shoved it into an empty canvas bag I found on a shelf. I yanked the most damning files from the banker's box. The forgeries, the Luminous Holdings records, the life insurance policy. I left the evidence board, let it tell its story. I stepped over Voss. His eyes tracked me, full of a hatred so pure it was almost awe-inspiring. "Garrity," he rasped, a bubble of blood forming on his lips. "He's mine." The final shock, delivered with his dying breath. Sergeant Garrity, the lead detective. Mine. The corruption went that deep. I was alone. I snatched the gun from the floor, wiping it clean on my sweatshirt, out of some primal, panicked instinct, and dropped it into the bag with the laptop. I ran to the door, peered out. The alley was empty. His car, a dark sedan, was parked just outside. I didn't take it. It was a tracker. I slipped out, pulled the storage door down behind me, and ran back the way I came, scaling the fence, with a desperate, bloody-handed agility I didn't know I possessed. The drive home was a surreal haze. I was a man covered in another man's blood, carrying a bag of evidence and a stolen gun, with a digital recording of a partial confession burning in my pocket. I had killed a man. Self-defense. But who would believe it? Garrity would ensure I was the villain. The house was dark, still holding its breath. Inside, I went straight to the basement laundry, stripping my clothes and shoving them, along with the canvas bag, into a heavy-duty garbage bag. I showered in water as hot as I could stand, scrubbing at skin that felt permanently stained. Dressed in fresh clothes, I sat at the kitchen island, the same spot where I'd first heard the tape, and plugged the digital recorder into my computer. I transferred the audio file. My own ragged breathing, the crash of the paint can, Voss's monologue about clean lines and framing a guilty husband. Then the struggle, the sickening crack of his nose, the muffled gunshot, his wet gasps, and his final damning words. Garrity, he's mine. It was something, but it wasn't enough. The defense attorney would tear it apart. It was dark, chaotic. It didn't prove he killed Elena. It only proved we fought. I needed the original tape. Elena's tape. I needed to go public in a way Garrity couldn't bury. An idea, desperate and wild, formed. The family vlog. Elena's passion project. The Thorne family Heartlight, she'd called it. A cheesy, sunny YouTube channel she used to document birthdays, vacations, garden blooms. She'd begged me to be in it more. I'd refused, citing privacy. Now it's thousands of subscribers, mostly strangers who liked her warmth, were the only jury I could access. I logged into the channel. The last video was 8 months old. Fall planter ideas. Her smile was luminous. The comments were a shrine of condolences. My hands shook as I created a new video. I titled it, Elena's Last Message. I didn't show my face. I set my phone to record a black screen. I played the audio of Elena's microcassette tape, her ghostly accusation filling my speakers. Then, in a voice raw with exhaustion and fear, I spoke over the silence that followed. This is David Thorne. She was murdered by a man named Martin Voss, with the help of my business partner, Leo Faller, because she discovered they were stealing from us. Voss is dead. I killed him tonight in self-defense. The detective on Elena's case, Sergeant Garrity, is compromised. I am uploading all the evidence I have to a public drive. The link is in the description. This is not a confession. It is a witness statement. If anything happens to me, you know why. I uploaded the video, set it to publish at 6 o'clock in the morning, and shared the link in a scheduled tweet from Elena's rarely used account. I dumped the files from the storage locker into a public cloud folder and linked it. Then I did the only thing left. I called 911. My name is David Thorne. I've been involved in a shooting at Sentinel Storage, Unit 114. A man named Martin Voss is dead. I am at my home, armed. I will surrender peacefully to any officer other than Sergeant Garrity. I have made public evidence regarding the murder of my wife, Elena Thorne. I am waiting. I hung up. I placed the gun on the island, well away from me. I sat with my hands in clear view. Outside, dawn was a faint gray smear on the horizon. In the stillness, I could almost hear her. Not from the tape, but from the memory she'd left in the walls, in the garden, in the terrible, loving trap she'd built. You left me no quiet options, she'd said. She was right. Only the sirens, growing louder in the breaking light, and the terrifying sound of my own truth, about to hit the world. A grieving widower's discovery of his wife's posthumous murder accusation sends him on a desperate race through a maze of financial deceit and betrayal, forcing a deadly confrontation with the real killers and a public unmasking of the corruption that claimed her life. David used his wife's family vlog to broadcast his evidence and force the truth into the light. Was this an act of brilliant defiance, or did it irreparably poison his chance for a fair trial and further traumatize his family?